All right, ladies and gentlemen, it was a crazy race here tonight for the Blue Emu Maximum Pain Relief 500. I think I got that title right. But Martinsville Speedway, it was the opening night race, the inaugural night race at Martinsville Speedway. After all these years, they've had lights at Martinsville now for the last couple years, in fact, and they put a great show on for the race here tonight. It was a pretty good race from start to finish. We're going to break down what happened in the race and then go through the finishing results and how the fantasy team did as usual. So first off, we're going to start things off. Stage one, Ryan Blaney led the field to the green flag, and he dropped back quickly. And not just him, there were a lot of star competitors that I not only would have thought would have been contenders tonight, but I'm sure most people would have thought would have been contenders tonight. Big names going towards the back of the field at the very beginning of the race, such as Ryan Blaney ended up falling a lap down by the competition yellow. Joey Logano dominated those first 60 laps up to the competition yellow and ultimately winning stage one. But up to that competition caution at lap 60, Ryan Blaney, the pole sitter, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, they were all a lap down. And they had to fight their way back through, but only one of which was actually able to get back on the lead lap. And he got back pretty quickly and drove his way through the field, and that was Blaney. But before that happened, of course, he was trying to drive his way up to the front. He got up to second by the end of stage number two. Pretty much out of nowhere, Jimmy Johnson went on to win stage two. He had a little bit of speed there towards the middle portion of the race and was looking like he was going to be a contender. He was running first to second. He had the track position. Once he lost the track position, you really never found Jimmy Johnson back into the top five for the rest of the night. I'm not sure if he was able to hold on to 10th at the end of the race or not, but he had an all right day. But obviously, it was all right. He definitely by no means had a car that could win the race, but definitely he had top 10 speed for the most part here today. Shout out to Bubba Wallace. He was in the top half of the field for a lot of the race, had a little bit of a pit strategy there at the end of stage one. There was a late caution. He ended up taking two tires and ended up finishing fifth in the stage. Plus, he ran top 10 basically the whole night. Again, not sure exactly on if he got to the finish. I haven't really looked at the finishing results since the end of the race. Just watched a couple interviews there with Truex and Blaney because that's ultimately where the race ended up coming down to. Third and final stage of the race, the Penske drivers were fast all day long. Logano, Keselowski, Blaney. It was tough to decipher for the longest time who was faster between Keselowski and Blaney. Ended up being Blaney on that last run. So Logano had let both Keselowski and Blaney on by, figuring that they might have had a better shot to catch Truex the final 50 laps, who had taken the lead pretty much out of nowhere going into the final 150 laps of this one here tonight. Not saying he was a non-factor the whole night. He was in the top 10 pretty much all day, but he just did not have the speed that the Penske boys looked like they had for the most part in this race. But then again, Logano let those two by. Then Keselowski had let Blaney by, trying to hope that Blaney could run him down, and none of them were able to run down Martin Truex Jr., who ultimately got his first win of the season, and he has locked himself into the playoffs now. So, pretty good win there. Not a lot of accidents that happened. A couple spinouts by some backmarker cars. I know Quinn Houff had a spinout. I believe that was the last caution that was brought out in the race here today. David Starr, who was driving the 53 car, also had a spin. Some of those, or I should say both of those spins, came from contact from somebody else. Austin Dillon brought out a caution very early in the race in the first 10 laps because he had a tire go down, but he saved it. And then ultimately he had an overheating, or not an overheating issue, but he had heat exhaustion during the race. I guess there were fumes that were coming into the car, making it very difficult for him to breathe. He had to get medical attention afterwards. Never really heard on how he was doing after that, but I would assume he is going to get to a pretty quick recovery. Just needed some fluids, I guess, at that point. They got him out of the car at the right time. So another very hot race. Again, you're getting into these summer months, and not only you're racing in summer months, but you're racing these tracks that are down south where the humidity this time of the year. It's why they race at these tracks at the beginning and the end of the season like they would Martinsville, or you saw Atlanta on Sunday. They got Talladega coming up here in 2 weeks. That's going to be a hot one underneath the Alabama sun. They got Miami coming up on Sunday. That's going to be a very hot one as well. Miami in June. Ooh. Yeah, but these drivers have definitely they've been fighting the warm weather, that is for sure. It didn't look like we were going to get this race in for the most part here tonight. I guess there was rain in the area. They had a rain shower about an hour and a half before the race started, but they still got the race started on time. Luckily, it's only a half-mile racetrack, and we were able to get the entire race in here tonight. So now let's take a look at your finishing results. Again, as we saw, Martin Truex Jr. got the win. He is the 8th different driver to win a race already this season. So half the spots are already locked up for the playoffs, and we have only completed the first 10 races. So we still got 16 races before the playoffs, only 8 spots remaining. And let's take a look at what the finishing results were for today. All right, so let's take a look at your top 10 here today and look at some other notable finishes here in this one. So Martin Truex Jr., again, first win of the season here tonight with the 3 Penske guys right behind him. Blaney second, Keselowski third, and Logano fourth. Chase Elliott was in the top 10 all night long, finished fifth. Alex Bowman kind of surprised me here with a 6th place finish. Thought he'd be the lesser of the 400 cars for the most part here, like it was in the first half. He was able to sneak in with the top 10. Matt DiBenedetto, he was one of the dark horse drivers that I had picked here today. Very good short track racer. Showed that prowess here today with a 7th place finish. William Byron 8th, Kurt Busch in 9th, and Jimmy Johnson did round out the top 10. Like I mentioned, though, Bubba Wallace was in the top 10 most of the night, and he had a 5th place finish back in stage number 1, so we got some stage points and a pretty decent finish for Richard Petty Motorsports here tonight. Chris Buescher, Michael McDowell also had good runs in the back half of the top 10 there for a little bit as well. Corey LaJoie, great run for his equipment in 18th. And we mentioned Kyle Busch early was a non-factor. Him and Denny Hamlin fell a lap down in the very beginning of the race, could not come back at all. Kyle Busch, in fact, ended up catching damage to the front of his car at one point in time, but ultimately he could never get back on the lead lap. He ended up finishing 2 laps down in 19th, and Denny Hamlin finished 3 laps down in 24th. I don't know what happened with Hamlin. He never really had damage to his car or anything. They just could not get that car right. But between Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, with this being a short track, I expected those guys to compete for a win here today, if not at least consistently run in the top 5 to top 10, and they just did not do that today. Really, the only downfalls on the fantasy team, as we'll see here in a little bit, and then the only DNFs that we had in this one, Timmy Hill very early on with a fuel pump issue, Reed Sorensen, and again, Austin Dillon was having the fumes leaking into the car, and that was causing him to have to retire from the race a little early. Eric Almirola also had a battery issue a little bit later in the race. He was battling that most of the night. He started in second, was running in the back half of the top 10. He was slowly slipping back, and then ultimately had a terrible finish because of that battery problem that we had seen. So now let's take a look, and we'll see how the fantasy team did here tonight. So now let's take a look at our fantasy lineup results here for this one today. Again, we had Keselowski and Blaney, 2 of the faster cars on the field, and Truex for that matter, who ultimately got the win. So we had the 1, 2, and 3 first, second, and third place finishers in this race on the team. We also had Chase Elliott, who finished in 5th. So great for the finishing results. Didn't get quite as many stage points as I would have hoped for tonight. That was pretty much our downfall, was the stage points. Truex only scored 7. He had a pit road penalty earlier in the race. Of course, Ryan Blaney had a pit road penalty, so they both had to come from a little further back. And ultimately, yes, they had the faster cars in this race to get there by the end of the race, but cost me stage points for the fantasy team here today. Chase Elliott, again, he had pretty good points today, and Keselowski ended up with a good finish. Kind of came out of nowhere there in that final stage. Ended up looking just like his other 2 Penske drivers, even better than Logano for that matter. And then Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, it was just a matter of which driver did I have the most faith in to score more points, and it was Kyle Busch at the end of stage 2, and he ended up outscoring Hamlin by 5, so a good decision there. No bonus points here tonight, but boy, we were close. Blaney finished second in not only the race, but even the second stage too, so very close to getting points there, because Truex won for Toyota. We did not get the win with Ryan Blaney driving the Ford as well. So again, no bonus points. So between no bonus points at all here today and barely any stage points for the most part between the drivers, that was really the only downfall. You see that 9,900 rank right now, just over that. It should still come down because we had a good day not as good as we did at Atlanta, but we had a solid performance. Really, again, honestly, if Kyle Busch could have ran top 10 all night, I think we could have had a very, very big spike in the jump. But better luck at Homestead here this week. Comment down below, what were your thoughts on the race? I thought it was a pretty solid race here. Martinsville usually puts on a pretty good show. It's a very, very good short track. The shortest track in NASCAR, in fact. But it was a pretty good showing for that opening night race that we've been long awaiting at Martinsville Speedway. So again, comment down below, what were your thoughts on the race? I'd like to hear from you guys. And hit the subscribe button for more daily NASCAR content. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. And I will see you guys in the next one.